Ladies and gentlemen, we have a new highest chess elo of all time, and it was achieved by none other than Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura. Now, those of you who watch my videos a lot may realize I'm not currently at home, and if you don't watch my videos a lot, I'm not currently at home. I'm currently in the UK. I'm actually in London, and I'm doing a couple of fan book events. I just came back from Cardiff. I did a BBC interview. Just doing like a 5-6 day, little media fan tour here in the United Kingdom. You are my second biggest audience. US is first. So in this video in particular, I'm recording out of my hotel room, and I'm going to take you through Hikaru's ridiculous journey to getting to the elo of 3,336, the highest ever Blitz elo achieved on chess.com. Higher than Magnus, higher than Nihal Sarin, higher than Daniel Naroditsky, higher than any other Blitz speed demon on the planet. Absolutely sensational stuff. Now, I'm going to show you 5 key games that Hikaru played on this run, as part of a run where he won 36 out of 38 games, and those 2 games he did not win were draws. So Hikaru went undefeated for 38 games to get to this peak, which is stupid, in one word. Also, if you happen to catch this video in the first, 2 hours it comes out, which would be pretty fun. There's still tickets left for the event tonight on November 18th. So if you want to come and you live in London, stop by. Unless you smell, then stay home. But you could put on deodorant. Anyway, first game that I have for you is against Kamil Dragun. And the next game that I have for you is against Grandmaster Kovalev, then another Grandmaster from China, then another Grandmaster from Uzbekistan. So, I mean, Hikaru played a murderer's row of Grandmasters, and he made it look unbelievable. So Dragun, Polish Grandmaster, I think now living in the United States, opened with d4. Hikaru played a6, and then Hikaru played b5, which is just dumb. I'm not calling the opening dumb. I'm calling the fact that guys like Hikaru get to be so good at chess that they could do whatever they want against you. It's like when a boxer puts his hands behind his back. And it's just so disrespectful. But there's nothing you can do, because by the time you threw the punch, too fast. Now, the reason this is bad, of course, and this isn't played at, top level, is because white is just better. White just gets an advantage. But he does that by playing this move e4, and now he has 3 pawns in the center. He's going to take back here when Hikaru takes with his bishop, and he will be very happy. But what Hikaru does is he plays bishop to b7 first, and now Dragun has a very interesting problem, because if he plays bishop d3, his bishop is now supporting too many pawns, and Hikaru will play takes and takes. And if he plays knight to c3, then Hikaru will play b4. So it's actually not really clear how to defend his pawn. So he goes here, which defends both center pawns, and now Hikaru takes, and just plays completely normally. Plays e6, plays knight f6, and then develops his bishop, pinning the knight to the king with good pressure on Dragun's center. Now, at some point, Dragun is either going to have to play solidly or be aggressive with a move like e5. He does go back. He takes the solid approach. Hikaru tries to make something happen in the center, tries to force Dragun to do something, like play the move e5 after all. And now he gives a check instead, knight c6. Wait. What? Well, it seems like Dragun was expecting knight c6 here, at which point he might push Hikaru back. But no. Instead of knight c6, Hikaru finds completely hanging the bishop on b4 because he has a fork. So not giving up on that pawn pressure in the center. Takes, and now just this position where, okay, yeah, white has an advantage, but I feel like in Hikaru's blitz games, he frequently gives away a computer-level advantage in order to take the game into deeper, unexplored territory. So he puts his bishop very powerfully in the center of the board. Now, white does have an edge. He has the edge because he has 2 bishops. He has the edge because he has good pressure on black's pretty bad queen side, but that doesn't really matter because it's Hikaru. So Hikaru plays the move f6, kicking out the knight. Then he puts a knight on c6 very powerfully. Now the queen's got to move. It does. Hikaru takes on c4 and initiates a massive exchange. He wins the pawn in the center. He trades the bishop. He loses the pawn on c7. So now Hikaru's weak queen side is kind of gone. He doesn't have any more weaknesses. Does a weakness exist if it's been accounted for and captured? So now Hikaru trades the rooks, and we just have a relatively straightforward and equal endgame. So he gives a check on e2 and then plays this very interesting queen trade offer, which would improve black's pawn. It would control those two pawns. Black would try to put a rook on c2, e5, and do something with his pawns, right? Both players under a minute, and now Hikaru plays e5, plays rook c2 first. I talked about this. e5, f5, f4, g5, brings his king on the light squares, and the position is still equal-ish, but Hikaru has a lot more time. So you'll notice that over the last few moves, we've gone from it being a balanced game in terms of time, like right here, 50-50. We go 10 moves, and Hikaru is just like a locomotive, you know? And now he's better. He's forcing his opponent into desperate situations because his opponent sees this coming, and these pieces are just way too annoying and powerful. So Hikaru plays h5, and brings the king back and plays g4, and he's just so good at creating these practical difficulties for his opponent. As he walks his king to d3, all his pawns are on light squares. All his pawns are on light squares. His opponent's time now dips below 10 seconds. Hikaru maneuvering, maneuvering, maneuvering. Look at this barrier. He locks the white king in the corner. He's just completely locked the king away from the rest of the board. He takes on a3. He marches his king all the way to the opposite side. Knight c1, he's going to play knight d3, and white just can't defend his pawns. And that is exactly what happens. King e2, he waits, and now the pawn goes, and white resigns. And I mean, it's just incredible the way he does this from positions that are, you know, just rook knight versus rook bishop, and black just has a little bit more to play for, just a little bit more to play for. And that is one of Hikaru's biggest strengths, right? Now, the next game, right, in that game, he crossed 33-30. Now, Hikaru actually held the previous record on chess.com for highest rating of all time, which was 3,334. His next game, Hikaru played against Kovalev. G3, move 1. Then he put his bishop on G2, and then he played D3. So he's playing the King's Indian attack, right? He's playing his openings, but backwards. Hikaru really likes this setup when he plays black. He also plays a6, but with white, you know, black takes the center, so Hikaru plays knight d2 and plays this move e4. This is the way that he wants to play. And this knight will really go to any of those 3 squares it can go to. White could consider f4 in the future as well. Big decision by black. Do you close the position? Do you keep the tension? Do you take? Kovalev opts to take. And now Hikaru just develops the rest of his pieces and castles, right? Plays, never mind. Bishop g4, he attacked, and instead of getting locked away here, potentially his opponent trades, and now Hikaru finishes his What? Now let me get this straight. A couple of moves ago, white went b3. Now I'm assuming that was to go bishop b2, so why is your knight there? Well, Hikaru repositions the knight. He repositions the knight, and Kovalev is doing his best. I mean, he's using what he has. He kind of locked the center. He's advancing on the queen side, and Hikaru just plays bishop g5 and says, okay, Kovalev, you want my pawn on b3? You want to infiltrate? Come on. Do your worst. Pawn takes, knight bd7, Hikaru goes back to d2. He induced the move out of his opponent, so rather this move, and now he's looking to go here. He's looking to play c3 before as well. Maybe he's going to put the rook back on a1, but most importantly, he's going to have a 20-second time advantage. Hikaru is going to play well, and he's going to play solidly, and he's going to play at a better pace than you. That is the most important thing. So he's going to keep a balance. He's not going to do anything rash or problematic. Kovalev plays rook a2, right? Plays rook a2. Hikaru plays this. Knight b4 instantly. Rook back to a7. Hikaru just advancing. Just a very casual move that keeps the game going. All right? Black plays knight c5, reroutes the knight to e6. Hikaru kicks out the bishop, plays knight d3, and pins the bishop to the knight. While building that time advantage, black plays knight d7. Knight b2, looking to route to c2. Black pins him. He unpins himself, and he's trying to play pawn to b4. This move now wins because it attacks the knight and a discovered attack on the rook. So black defends his rook. Bishop to h3 takes the open diagonal. Knight to e6. Hikaru says, no, I'm going to undevelop. But look what just happened in the last few moves. Black went from 59 seconds on the clock to 46. What? Why did he spend that much time? Well, it was a tense position. Hikaru was threatening b4. So for example, let's say black just plays h6. Hikaru's got ideas like rook d1 followed by b4, and it's actually really difficult suddenly to defend yourself. You just have too much pressure, right? So Hikaru overloads your nervous system, and suddenly black has 18 seconds on the clock. Bishop c1. Hikaru played that move in like 4 seconds, 5 seconds. b4, just keeping as many pieces on the board as possible. This is one of his biggest strengths. He's great in the endgame. But it's also that time management. He's a great defender, but sometimes just making you make difficult practical decisions. The position's equal. It's been equal, but it doesn't mean it's dead. It just means it's equal. Rook a7. Now the rook takes the open file. The queen undevelops. Black down to 8.6. He plays knight a4. When you're low on time, you're going to try to do stuff. When you are low on time, you're going to try to do stuff. And what I mean by do stuff is you're going to try to simplify. Your brain just wants to trade, because the more pieces that you trade, you feel like you're accomplishing something and you can't lose. But now suddenly this is Hikaru's biggest advantage of the game. Why? Why was that knight trade so good for white? Because now he takes the diagonal. Because now white seizes the control of the diagonal. The dark squared bishop for black is bad, but so what? How is white going to win? Rook a2. Hikaru centralizes. And now, what black should do is relax. Black should realize he's worse, and white is going to try to play b5 or rook d3, rook d1, but it's not over. But instead of that, unfortunately, I just said, when you get low on time, you try to do stuff. Kovalev sacrifices his knight. It's a bluff, and he played it with 2 seconds on the clock. He felt the pressure. Hikaru was mounting the pressure on him. It was an equal position for like 30 moves straight. But when you play Hikaru, the game hangs on a knife's edge, and his opponent self-destructs, because after this, bishop takes f4. He doesn't even have to take with the pawn. He could have taken with the pawn, but instead of opening up his king, Hikaru just finds this. It's just a fork. And black can go here, but then there is queen takes f7. And this is not quite checkmate, but you just lose a full bishop. F takes. Don't go here and blunder checkmate. That's not what I recommend. You actually have queen a2, which is pretty brutal, and you cannot get taken because it's back rank mate over here. So a very, 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 very smooth game from Hikaru against Kovalev, who he just kept the tension. He kept pouring the pressure on, and he wins, and he's 33-31. In the next round, he was given XXY Soul 6. That is not his name on his passport. That is Xu Zhengyu from China. Very strong grandmaster, 3,000 rated, and the ratings keep going up. 33-30. I might have skipped a game, by the way. I think Hikaru actually gained 2 points for that win versus Kovalev. D4. Now, what's Hikaru going to do? He plays a6 again. It's ridiculous. Now he plays a French defense. So Hikaru is basically playing e6 d5, which is a French, but then playing the move a6, and he's going to try to advance on the queen side because he has to justify his play somehow, right? But it's just so bogus. Like, how? This dude is playing 3,000 rated blitz players, and like both him and Magnus just sabotage themselves in the opening, and he just pins the knight. Now Xu Zhengyu is a solid player, so instead of taking the center, pushing, he's trying to clarify the situation in the center of the board and get a simpler position. What does he do? Develop his light squared bishop, he castles, and develops his dark squared bishop. Now, apparently, this is like a really bad position for black. Like the computer here is trying to say it's like plus 0.5, but just by developing a piece, one lazy move, Hikaru goes here, and suddenly, this pawn is really hard to protect. Now here, Xu Zhengyu must have thought, I'm going to play h3, and Hikaru's going to take, right? And he probably thought Hikaru's going to take, and then he's going to take here, and then I'm going to go here, and I don't really know what came after that. But instead of that, Hikaru just plays bishop h5, and I mean, basically, the only thing that white can do is to undevelop to defend the center. The way Hikaru played this, it's like an exchange French, but he got his pieces all in the right squares, and he's just going to castle his king. But now Xu Zhengyu, feeling the pressure of the opening, feeling kind of like the annoyance of this, plays g4, and Hikaru is one, and that's a very committal move. Pushing pawns in front of your king when you castle, not always recommended unless there's a justification. Bishop to g6, he plays knight e5, but again, Hikaru he's like a judoist. Hikaru, a judoka. I don't know if that's the term used for both men and women in judo, but he's like a judoka. He takes all the forward momentum you dish out, he throws it right back. Bishop takes c3, removing the pawn, the knight, damaging white's pawn structure, trading, and now just very simple, knight a5. The idea of knight a5 is that I'm going to kick your knight out or trade, and then I'm going to put my knight on c4. Okay, now white plays bishop to g3, and Hikaru doesn't even castle. First, he kicks out the knight, because white's only move is this. And now Hikaru does castle and does put that knight on c4. It's a really nice perch for the knight. Really nice perch. And now in the endgame, Hikaru knows that's going to be a very big problem. We just saw him methodically destroy a very, very strong grandmaster in an endgame. Like this, like an avalanche pouring down a mountain, okay? Now, Hikaru understands light squares. He's going to win this game on the light squares because white has a dark squared bishop. And if that dark squared bishop is rendered useless, like if in the endgame you play pawn c6, that bishop does not participate at all. Cannot guard the light squares. If white plays knight f5, the more pieces white trades, the worse this gets for white. You're going to do all of this, then I'm going to play c6, king f7, rook e8, and I also have knight d2, which just so happens to trap your rook, but if I didn't, that's what I would do. Rook e2, rook f7, rook e1, rook f8, bishop h2, and now out of by the way, notice the time. Notice Hikaru dominating every single one of his opponents on the clock. Now, it seems like this game has been relatively straightforward, both guys kind of maximizing their pieces. Now, one of the most unlikely moves occurs. It looks like black was sitting back, waiting for white to play knight f5, right? Waiting with pressure, what pieces are going to get traded. Now Hikaru plays f5 himself. And that's an issue, because if you trade on f5, what's going to happen is you split your pawns. This one pawn that he pushed out of inertia like 20 moves ago, right? White just didn't know what to do, so he tried to kick out Hikaru just to make something happen. And like 20 moves later, now we have a massive decision to make. Now that pawn is really, really overextended. White decided to push it to safety instead of trading to not open up the f-file. Hikaru says, boom. Now the bishop is mummified. Look at this. It's completely locked in. And I have eyes on h3, and I might get to the g5 pawn. Rook e6. And now in this position, Hikaru can play knight e3, disconnecting the rooks from each other. But he does it a slightly different way by playing knight d6 to try to play knight to e4. And let's say white plays like rook e5 because he doesn't want to get trapped. f3, queen takes h3 is just game over. There is nobody who can protect the pawn. So suddenly, it's not just the endgame that you are on the verge of losing, it's getting mated. So white plays g6, he tries to make something happen. Hikaru takes the pawn. Knight takes, rook takes. It kind of looks like white is attacking black. No. No. But knight e4, slightly underestimating c4. I mean, you're playing a 3,000 rated grandmaster who's suddenly attacking you viciously with his c-pawn, trying to remove the defense of your knight on e4. So you play rook to e8. And you're trying to take and switch the game to the e-file. Rook g4 played by white going after your pawn. Hikaru plays f3. Computer doesn't bless it because it allows the bishop to get back into the game. That would have been the best move. But then there was like knight f6 and things like that. And again, it's a scramble. C takes d5. Hikaru plays knight f6, hits the rook on g4. We have a trade. Black's queen is going down to the first rank. It's arrived. Now it's hanging around and it's attacking everything. Here comes the knight as well. A lot of threats. White plays rook g4, and suddenly Hikaru is winning with knight takes f2. If knight takes f2, queen takes f2, check. Here, f2, and everything hangs. But in a low time situation, Hikaru goes this way and gets to e2. And now with best moves, it is a draw. But white, unfortunately, lacking the time here also. Bishop e5 there was winning. It's not always going to be perfect. It's a fight until the bitter end. And we go to an endgame. But after rook d7, white cannot make any progress. And another king has been locked away. That game that I just showed you, how Hikaru boxed away that king, he plays g5, king g6, and his opponent, I mean, this game is a mad scramble, but after rook b8, rook g5, whoops. And sometimes you got to win games like this. Sometimes you got to get down and dirty. Sometimes it's not perfect. It's not perfect, but it was actually very good for a very long time. And as you get better and go up the rating ladder, you know, it's not good enough to have a 45-second time advantage and a minus 0.9 position because your opponent's not going to go away. If you miss a chance that buries people, if you miss a chance that completely wins by disconnecting the rooks and threatening, you know, for example, here, rook e3, queen takes h3, hitting this, threatening mate if the knight moves. If you don't bury the 3000s, you know, you gotta beat a person at this level like 4 times in the same game. And on his 4th attempt, Hikaru did in fact beat him and got to 33-33. And then This was the game that got Hikaru to his second peak of the day. And then I will show you the game that got him to 33-36. Hikaru got to 33-36 by beating two people, I think both 10-0. An Iranian title player who was rated 29-50, and then Liam Putnam, who's a young American, very strong player, who's rated 2900 blitz. Then he won like 5 more games, so he beat Liam to get to 33-36. He drew a game and lost like 8 rating points, which is, can you imagine? You draw a game against like a 2900 and you lose 8 rating, which is just bananas. For context, if Hikaru plays a 2900, he gets 1 point for winning, which is anyway. Shield 12 is Shamsidin Vokhidov. He's a grandmaster from Uzbekistan, and he actually plays for the Gotham Knights in the Pro Chess League. If you don't know what the Pro Chess League is, you should know what the Pro Chess League is. Anyway, in this game, Hikaru plays a reverse Grunfeld. So he plays g3, knight f3, and then plays d4. C takes, knight takes. He takes the center with a pawn, undevelops his knight so because he doesn't want to make a trade. None of this is particularly important, but Shamsidin plays h5. So Hikaru's already getting attacked. He's barely gotten out of bed. His opponent's trying to play h4, take, or maybe h3. Hikaru plays h3, so that if his opponent plays here, he will go here, okay? And Shamsidin plays bishop to e6 and plays rook c8. So either black is going to castle or he's going to leave his king in the center of the board. f4, h4, g4. And now a big moment. Is black going to sacrifice? Right, so that's a major question. Is black going to sacrifice? If black waits too long, these pawns are going to go from defensive measures to offensive measures. White is going to play g5, f5, e5, maybe knight c5, maybe knight d5, maybe the bishop is going to come 2-3. It's going to be very unpleasant. So he plays queen c7. Now, keep in mind it's move 13, and Shamsidin just spent 30 seconds on that move, so Hikaru is now up 37 seconds on the clock. The master of making things difficult for his opponents, and immediately plops a knight directly into his opponent's territory, and at some point, he's going to follow up the move knight to d5 with c3. And the idea of c3 is that he's going to cover d4 and b4, and this knight is not going to be able to get in. You could go here to defend the knight, but it's more important to stop this knight from developing. That's by far more important. So bishop takes, e takes, knight a5, take, and now c3. There it is. The pawn has moved the square forward. It is controlling the, well, there's no knight, but it's still controlling those 2 squares. The bishop is blocked. The pawn is no longer a weakness. It is defended by a pawn, and black castles. How will Hikaru win the position against the 3,000 rated grandmaster, where he is up 30 seconds on the clock and has a marginal advantage? Well, first he will finish his development. Then he will prevent his opponent from expanding with his pawns, because his opponent clearly wanted to play b4. So rook c4, patrolling everything on the 4th rank. Hikaru makes a preparatory move and centralizes his bishop in the center with vision this way. And now he's going to go here and advance. Rook e8, rook e1, black now sensing that his time is ticking very quickly before Hikaru is able to start an attack, tries to trade dark squared bishops. Hikaru obliges, slides the queen out of the way, and at some point is going to play f5, g5, but he's not going to rush, right? Because his opponents frequently do it for him. His opponents frequently do it for him. They feel the pressure, they feel this, right? They feel all of this, and now takes. All of white's pieces have opened up. Bishop d5, it's not quite a fork because of rook takes, but now queen c5, queen d2, and again, he's just still up 35 seconds. I mean, it's just a really difficult position to play, and black got his rook trapped. So, for example, rook c5 was possible here, but after queen d4, it's not just any pawns, it's your king getting mated, and bishop f7, and if knight f6, there's g5. And if rook d5, I take, and then I go here. So queen c5 is played, and queen d2, and that rook on c4 is completely stuck. So it has to go here, but in saving it, Hikaru goes for the king. Beautiful coordination in Hikaru's position. All the pawns in front of the king are advanced, but the king is safe. The queen guards the bishop attacks the pawn, along with the rook, which also attacks the knight, and the game is over. b4 also seals away the rook from all of this, but we don't even have to get there. Rook f7, queen e2. The bishop can be taken 2 different ways, but this is checkmate. Queen e7, knight takes d5, rook h7, queen f7 mate, and that is how Hikaru capped off a monster run against grandmasters, getting to 3,335. Like I said, this was him regaining it slightly earlier in the day. He crossed it right before losing a game. Not losing a game, drawing a game and losing 8 elo. Technically, this was the game where he achieved this peak, but I just thought 36 wins and 2 draws was worth highlighting. A murderer's row of grandmaster opponents. I mean, it's like absolutely ridiculous. He didn't lose a game in 38 games online. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Liam Putnam played a very solid queen's pawn opening, but Hikaru castled, and this thorn is a very annoying thing in White's side because he's been removed from the center. White is now going to spend the rest of the game trying to get that pawn, also advancing here and maybe fighting with the bishop. And in these structures, what Black wants to do is Black just wants to play h5 and just deliver mate. That's really what Black tries to accomplish. Hikaru reroutes the knight. He puts the bishop to f5 and the knight on h7. White tries to trade. I told you White is going to try to play d5 and utilize, and Hikaru says, no, thank you. I'm okay with a trade. Knight to g5. And basically, let's say White waits a little bit. What Black now wants is something like queen c8 and to take on h3. You want to take on h3 because you want to get there with the queen, and White is too congested. There's just nothing White can do. White plays f3. I'm going to play like even knight g4 is winning. Takes and bishop to e5, right? Like queen g3, queen here. It's just over. So that's really the idea. And really what you're trying to wait here with White, you're trying to fight back with your f-pawn, because now Black has to take. That is the only way that Black can play, because if Black doesn't do that, if Black leaves, Black has no attack, and then White is going to get completely overwhelming on this side of the board. So in the game, Hikaru does in fact take on f3, but sometimes in these positions, it's not just about the checkmating attack, it's also winning the battle for the center of the board, and Hikaru promptly plops his knight directly in the center and asks Liam, what are you going to do about it? He didn't actually write that. He didn't write that in the... I mean, I don't know, maybe he did. And so now the computer really just wants White to slowly and, expand, and then, Black is going to put the knight on g3, and then Black is going to play f5, securing that control over the e4 square. Instead, it happens like this, and Liam here just under the pressure of playing Hikaru, who is currently rated 3,335 at the point of this game. He should have played bishop d3, which attacks the knight, at which point Black would have gone here and would have kept attacking. Instead of that, Liam played here. And Hikaru, as we have seen in this video, seldom misses winning opportunities, and this one is no different. He just takes on e3. He is now up a pawn. He trades the bishops, puts the knight on g3, and simply too many things are hanging in the White position. Liam plays here and hangs a rook. Brain fart, I suppose, or I don't know. Maybe he thought Hikaru wouldn't see it. Hikaru is now the highest ever rated blitz player on chess.com in history, breaking his own record of 3,334, and it's just absolutely shocking how he did it. Now, just to tell you how difficult it is to actually preserve this, literally the next day he lost 100 rating. Like literally the next day, Hikaru played in like a chess.com tournament. He played in like one of these, arena tournaments, and he lost 100 points. Because you have to understand, Hikaru is at the level where him beating a 2,900 gains him 1 point. Hikaru losing to a 2,900 loses him 15. Can you imagine? You have to beat somebody 15 times to break even. It's ridiculous. Magnus is currently rated 3,295. He's currently chasing him. He's roughly around 3,290, 3,300. So just ridiculous. Do you think he will get to 3,400? I don't know. Do you think the fan and book events in London will be fun? I don't know, but I'm excited to find out. I am now going to walk around, get some food, and that's all I have for you today. Get out of here.